What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. This is a video request from the brother Ticket TV. So, he asked me to do a video about what if in today's NBA, in today's era of, the super team and, guys are so pressured now. Even other day I said, man, look, even though it's admirable that Giannis and Dame Lillard and these guys are trying to win it the right way through drafting, through signing, free agents that pan out, some good pieces. It's like in today's league, man, you have to do what these guys do now. That put a super team together, and I hate it, but it's like what the fuck? You really have no choice now, right? But what would it be like if the NBA was like how it was, say, in the '70s? I'll say the '70s because I know some people say the '90s and the '80s, but the '70s, that was to me the best period of parity. You really didn't have a super team. Every team, pretty much had a star and a secondary star to some level. That's why, you really didn't have a lot of 60-win teams back then. A lot of guys were like 53 and 29, 54 and 28. That was considered a great record back then. 57-25 was awesome. It was the league was a lot more competitive. So what would it be like if in today's NBA these guys were spread out more? James Harden was still with Houston. Paul George was on a team by himself with some other role players. Kawhi Leonard was on a team by himself with some role players. Uh, Anthony Davis was on another team with some role players. Uh, LeBron James, let's say the state that he's in right now, he was on a team with some role players. Durant was somewhere on another team by himself. Kawhi Leonard, and et cetera, et cetera. How would the league be then? Um, a lot more competitive. Uh, I suspect that fans, if this had been how the NBA had been for a long period of time, I think all of our collective blood pressures would be lower because the media would not, in my opinion at least, talk 24/7 about one particular player all the time because I suspect in that scenario, it would depend more upon the health of the team, um, the age of the stars, and I think pretty much just that. That would be the determining factors, and luck would be involved as well. A little bit of luck. Uh, in this scenario, a couple of years ago, I would have said the best player in the league, if everybody was spread out, the best player in the NBA, I think the perception would have still been LeBron. But however, I think if you're looking at a league where everybody is spread out and they're healthy, it might be Kawhi Leonard in that scenario if he's healthy, but the difference would be so negligible and it would be a lot more debatable. Some people would say Kevin Durant. Then if Dame Lillard went on a roll and had some great individual performances, some people would say Dame is the best scorer. Steph, you can't forget about Steph. But then I always say this too. I still believe that if you put Klay Thompson on a right team and give him and have him in the Reggie Miller role, he would be seen as a star if he had the right team around him. If he had a team with, let's say a great point guard. Let's say he was playing with a guy like, let's just say for the sake of argument, Russ was playing with Klay Thompson, and you had a guy like let's say you had a guy like Bogdanovich on that team as well, and you know, let's say at the 4 and 5, you have, I don't know, one stretch dude at the four and some guy like Clinton Capella at the center. I think that'd be a good team. I think that'd be a championship contending team. I really do. Some guy at the four that could shoot threes and play good defense and plays excellent defense. I think that more than makes up for Russ's lack of outside shooting with Bogdanovich and Klay Thompson and the stretch four. And you have Clint Capella, and you have a nice bench there. I think that's a team that could be a contender at least. Um, but yeah, anyway, that would be a more intriguing league. You would have more people interested in the NBA. You wouldn't have so many people who are just casuals, um, because they would talk about, I think, the NBA players more. Um, you know, and I think that with the perception that your team has a shot because the NBA talent is more spread out, fan involvement would be similar to how it used to be 15, 20 years ago when you watched the games with passion and you were emotionally invested. A lot of times people are afraid to become emotionally invested in a team the same way that, well, not same way, but there's some similarities to when you are afraid to invest yourself emotionally in a partner because you don't trust this partner. If you see signs that this partner is not going to fulfill your needs, right, in that form, you and you don't trust this partner, you're not as emotionally invested, right? So there's some similarities there with your relationship with a team that you want to root for. If you feel like this team, if it's not worth it, not saying it's going to be a guarantee that your team is going to win a title, but if you feel like that team has no shot, you don't care. You stop following it. Um you become what's the term I'm looking for? Indifferent. You become indifferent to how that team is. I know a guy right now. 15, 20 years ago, he was the most passionate New York Knicks fan I've ever met. He's just now, after 10 years, starting to watch Knicks games because he had become that dispassionate because of the fact that the Knicks have just been horrible. They've been absolutely horrible for almost a decade. And, nobody talks about the New York Knicks anymore, up until now, recently. But if you feel like your team has a shot, then you're going to become more emotionally invested. But I think it would make the product better. And I think the worst thing that happened to the NBA was the acceptance of huddling up and forming super teams. Now, I know some people have this argument about, oh man, why should these players be loyal to organization? But that's not what it's about. Fuck the organization. It's about these players wanting to beat the other elite players. Magic Johnson wanted to beat Larry Bird. Larry Bird wanted to beat Magic Johnson. Michael Jordan wanted to beat both of them. Isaiah wanted to beat all of them. Charles Barkley felt he was just as good as Jordan for a long period of time. Karl Malone thought he was the best power forward. Chuck said, I'm the best power forward. John Stockton was perceived to be the best point guard. Gary Payton said, I can be just as good, if not better than John Stockton. You get where I'm going with this. They didn't want to, oh man, they didn't go like, man. Jordan didn't go like, oh man, hey man, Clyde Drexler's an amazing player, man. I think it'd be fun, me and Clyde play together. He can play small forward, he can be shooting guard. We can win so many championships, man. It'd be awesome. No, Jordan said, hey man, when they compare him to me, I took that personal. I wanted to whoop his ass. I mean, that's just how it was. Now, what they did do, those players, it was a pecking order. What I mean by that is they would go to management and say, hey, you know, a good piece to this team would be if we can get such and such, Walter Davis. Now, at that time, Walter Davis was on the downside of his career. Okay, he wasn't a star anymore, as he had been in his heyday with the Phoenix Suns, but he was the piece. Now, they would go to management and say, hey, let's get this guy right here. He still has something left in the tank. I think he can help our team. Okay, that's something different. But to go to, and go to another star on your level and conspire to have him brought in, because think about this for a second. Adrian Dantley got traded to Detroit. Dantley was a superstar. Dantley made Detroit, and with the addition of the draft, because that happened in '86, with the acquisition of Dantley plus the drafting of Dennis Rodman and John Salley, and I think Rick Mahorn got there that year too. That made Detroit a whole nother level. But because Isaiah didn't like Dantley, they traded him for Mark Aguirre, which, I mean, some people could say, oh well, in some ways it was a better fit, but Mark Aguirre wasn't the same level player as Adrian Dantley. People forget Dantley was leading the team in scoring. Aguirre was a piece that, they got along with each other. AD and Aguirre, they were friends. So he wanted to bring his friend along. But Aguirre was a piece, not a superstar. They actually traded a superstar for a guy who was on decline, but was a good piece. You see what I'm saying? The NBA was different back then. People bring up Charles Barkley joining the Rockets, but people got to remember that in '96, the Rockets were rebuilding. Not the Rockets. The Suns. The Suns were rebuilding. In 1993, they went to the finals and lost to the Bulls. In '94, I think they won something like 57 games, but they got eliminated by, who was it? The Rockets, I believe. In '95, they won 59 games with a 3-1 lead. By '96, Charles Barkley was 33 years old. Kevin Johnson had vowed to retire by the time he was 30. He was breaking down as a player. Dan Marley got traded from. No, he didn't get traded. He signed as a free agent to the Cleveland Cavaliers. A lot of those players from that Phoenix Suns team left or retired, so they were rebuilding. The Rockets went 48-34 in '96, but they lost in the second round and got swept by the Sonics. So this wasn't the same team that won a title the year before. They were on the decline. By this time, Barkley was still a star, but the perception was Barkley was in the downside of his career. Drexler was definitely on the downside of his career. He only had one more year left after that in him. Olajuwon was starting to already show signs of the health problem that led him to retirement with his lungs. He had a lung issue. I think it was some type of asthmatic condition. So all those guys were on the decline. But anyway, the point is, I'm going way too long with this. The NBA was different back then. And you would think that would bring back some of that mindset. You know what I'm saying? So the worst thing that happened to me was this whole thing with the super team. Okay. But that's pretty much all I got to say, man. Um, I think the league would be in a better place because every team, I think, would be improved overall from a competitive standpoint. You wouldn't have one team just, losing 70 games. You wouldn't have one team winning 70 games. It would be more of a competitive balance, I think, if the talent was spread out the way that it should be. But, that's a fairy tale. And that's never going to happen because of the culture and partially because of the media. Because, as I said in my prior video, the media puts pressure on these guys to go to large markets. So it is what it is. Tell me what you guys think.